Hi everybody, it's Ingrid. Welcome. Today we're going to do an ode to the Stars and Stripes. This is my salute to the United States of America's Independence Day. That's right, today's July 4th, and we have 3 different embossing looks for you using the Mix Mash stamp set and the Bold Birthday Sentiments. We're going to use several stamps to create this fun look, so let's get started. To start off, we're going to use 2 different types of dye-based ink and the directional arrows stacked as you see here. We need to first remove any leftover oils or static from our project, so we're going to use a destatic tool liberally over our cardstock. Normally you would use a sticky ink like pigment ink to attract embossing powder, but because Ranger's Distress ink stays a little bit more open than most dye-based inks, we're going to use that, and we're going to quickly add some clear embossing powder to our directional arrows. This is going to form the stripes in a tone-on-tone look on our cardstock. Working in sections helps to ensure that I'm going to get good coverage of embossing powder when I dip my project into the Brutus Monroe Superfine Icicle Powder. When heat setting your project, you first want to make sure that you preheat your heat tool. Then you want to add some heat to the front and back side of your cardstock to help prevent less warping. Move your tool slowly, and once you see the powder melt, just continue to bring it to a different area. You want to ensure that there's no grains left behind, so make sure to check your project closely to ensure that everything is heated. Once you've allowed your project to cool, use a dry microfiber cloth to remove any leftover destatic tool particles. We're going to place a white panel that's cut down to 3 5/8 inch wide over the front of our card, and that's going to allow our tails to stick out to the side, representing the stripes in the American flag. Next, we're going to use Versamark ink on some navy cardstock to stamp the stars that are represented in the US flag. Now I have 3 of the stars from the Bold Birthday Sentiments set here, and I'm just going to randomly stamp them across this piece of scrap paper, which we'll then cut down. Versamark is a sticky watermark ink, and this is a great ink pad to have. It's wonderful for embossing, but you can also use it to stamp with, where it's just going to give you a darker version, as you can see here, of whatever it is that you're stamping on your cardstock. We're going to go ahead and shuttle that into some Brutus Monroe white embossing powder, and you can see that that's a really nice contrast on the paper. Sometimes you have stray embossing powders that are just kind of left behind that get stuck to for whatever reason to some oil or static that's on your cardstock. I just use an inexpensive paintbrush to remove that, but you want to be careful not to touch your image because you'll remove the powder from that as well. So here are our heat set images, and you can see what great detail there are. I love this large star because it has a really fine line as an outline. Now here's our piece cut down. I wanted it to be more like a tag. So we're going to end up doing something to the corners there, but first I'm just going to show you how I'm going to have this card kind of put together, and the tag's going to kind of be put askew. To finish off my tag, I wanted to cut the corners a little bit and punch a hole so that it looked a little bit more like a military dog tag. So I'm first going to create the corners, so I'm going to take one corner and I'm going to flip it upside down to the other side, use long-handled scissors, and then I'm going to go ahead and create a straight cut there. Then we're going to go ahead and punch a 1/8 inch circle in the top once we have all 4 corners done. And then later on we're going to put some twine through. Now that we have all our pieces together, we're going to kind of see how everything looks. And I wanted to pull the star theme to the white cardstock. The card was kind of lacking a little something for me, so I felt that we could maybe add some more stars, maybe more of a tone-on-tone in the background, and that would help pop the card. First, we're going to add our greeting. We're using Stampin' Up! Classic ink, and this is the Real Red ink pad. I want to emboss this image, but Stampin' Up! Dries really quickly. So when you have an ink that is not as open as, say, Ranger's Distress ink, you first want to ink it up in Versamark, which is clear watermark ink, then stamp it into your dye-based ink, and then onto your project. Add some clear embossing powder to allow the color to shine through, and you have a sentiment of whatever color ink that you have. Once that's heat set, we are then going to add stars all around our project in Versamark, and we're going to emboss them in clear. When you handle your project many times throughout it, be sure to go back over, as you've seen me do, with the destatic tool, because every time you touch it, your hand leaves oils behind, and that's just another sticky surface for embossing powder, especially superfine detailed powder, to stick to. Now you see here we have lots of different stars stamped, and we're going to stamp a little bit more towards the bottom around the greeting as well. But I wanted you to really get a good view of the stars, because in the photographs, because it's tone on white, using the clear rather than a white pigment ink underneath, you can't really see them that well in the photographs. In real life, it's absolutely beautiful, but it doesn't photograph as easily. So here we're going to add that little bit to the bottom, and then we'll complete the embossing and finish the card. Doesn't that look great? I absolutely love how this turned out. You can really see the stars there, and it just gave you that little tiny something that the card needed. Now to string my twine through the top, I create a loop, and then I feed my loop from the back to the front. Then I take the tails and I bring them through my loop that is now in the front and just pull it so that it's a little more taut. And there's a perfect way of adding some string to your project. Now I want this to be popped up a little bit because it needs to kind of separate itself from the stars, so I added some foam dimensionals to the back and just popped that onto the front. And there you go. I love this project. It turned out really well. So salute to all our troops, and thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a little something about some different ways of using your embossing powders, and be sure to check out these stamp sets in the shop. I look forward to seeing you again, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Till next time, bye-bye.